I can still see the moment it happened as clearly as if it's frozen in a photograph. It was late. One of those evenings where the world feels drained of color. I'd just come home from a long shift, kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of my bed, still half soaked from the Portland drizzle. I wasn't thinking about anything important. Just tired. Just existing. My phone buzzed, once. Then again. Then a third time, like it was insisting I pay attention. I picked it up expecting a reminder from work, or maybe a notification about a bill. I wasn't prepared for the sentence staring back at me. Mom, we changed the locks. This isn't your home anymore. Let's see how tough you are without us. Haha. For a moment, everything inside me went very still. The room didn't spin. I didn't gasp. I didn't even blink. It was like my brain had to reboot to understand what I was reading. Change the locks. Not your home. Let's see how tough you are. That stupid haha at the end burned the most. No explanation. No argument. Just a message, cold and petty enough to feel like it had icicles hanging off it. And the worst part? I believed them. I sat there with the rain trickling down the window, my jacket still clinging damp to my skin, my fingertips numb around my phone. I should have cried. Any normal person would have cried. But instead, I laughed out a small, strange sound. Not hysterical. Not angry. Almost relieved. Because for the first time in my life, I could see the truth with brutal clarity. They hadn't kicked me out. They just shown me what I already knew deep down. I was never really home there to begin with. People on our street always said we were the type of family that belonged in greeting cards, the ones with matching sweaters and spotless driveways. They'd wave at us when we left for church. Compliment Mom's garden. Tell Dad how lucky he was to have two well-raised daughters. If you only looked from the outside, maybe you'd believe it. White shutters. Fresh paint. A porch light always glowing like a welcome sign. But the thing about perfect-looking houses, sometimes the quietest ones are holding the loudest secrets. Inside ours, love wasn't love. It was a currency. My childhood was a job I never applied for. Dad barking orders like I was the apprentice he never paid. Hold the ladder. Hand me the wrench. Why aren't you moving faster? My hands were full of splinters before I ever got my first paycheck. He'd chuckle and say, "You're tougher than any son I could have had." As if I was supposed to feel grateful. Mom was the softer knife. Sweet voice. Sharp edges. She'd smile at me and say, "Family doesn't keep score." But somehow the scoreboard always tilted in their favor. And then there was Emily, my sister, the delicate one. She floated through life while I patched every leak, paid every temporary bill, and fixed every problem no one else wanted to acknowledge. If I was the glue, she was the glass ornament no one dared to bump too hard. They had roles, and I had responsibilities. That was the unspoken contract. Until the night they broke it in writing. As I sat there with the phone in my hand, that message glowing harsh and ugly in the dark, something inside me shifted into place. Like a puzzle piece I'd been forcing my whole life suddenly snapped into the correct spot. They weren't protecting a home. They were protecting an investment, one I had unknowingly funded for years. And now that I wasn't useful, they cut the cord fine. They wanted to see how tough I was. They were about to find out. Because that message wasn't the end. It was the opening line of a story they never expected me to write. The morning after the message, the world felt unnaturally quiet. Not peaceful, hollow. Like the silence left behind after furniture has been dragged out of a room. I woke up before my alarm, staring at the ceiling while the early light crept across it in slow, cautious lines. My phone was still on my nightstand, screen dark, but I could feel the message sitting there like a bruise. Most people would panic after being told they don't have a home anymore. Most people would start calling friends, searching for options, crying, begging. I didn't do any of that. Instead, I made coffee strong, bitter, No sugar. Then I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and pulled up my banking history, not because I knew exactly what I was going to do, but because something inside me whispered, if they want to pretend everything you've done was nothing, show them exactly what nothing looks like on paper. First, I just scrolled utilities I had covered just until your dad gets paid. Grocery runs I funded when mom said she forgot her wallet. Mortgage transfers labeled temporary help. Repair receipts I paid because dad didn't trust contractors. Every transaction was a memory, and every memory had a lie attached to it. What started as scrolling turned into sorting. Sorting turned into screenshotting. Screenshotting turned into spreadsheets. Hours passed. I didn't blink. Every line grew the same quiet rage inside my chest. Not fire, but something colder. Sharper. By noon, I wasn't wounded anymore. I was documenting. By evening, I wasn't documenting anymore. I was building a case. There's a strange moment that happens when you stop trying to fix what broke you and start trying to expose it instead. It feels like stepping out of a fog and realizing you've been walking with your spine bent for years. I kept going. Old emails, PDF statements, bank transfers, receipts for roofing materials I'd bought with my own college money because family comes first. Proof that they weren't broke, they were just comfortable using me like a second income source. The more I collected, the clearer the pattern became. I wasn't a daughter in that house. I was the emergency fund. And the emergencies were always theirs, never mine. Just after midnight, I created a folder on my desktop. Not evidence. Not proof. I named it The Ledger of Truth, because that's what it was. Every ugly number and hidden debt, every lie wrapped in "we need you." Every time I'd been guilted into carrying a weight none of them ever planned to lift. When I clicked save, something strange happened. I felt taller. Like I had grown back an inch I didn't know I'd lost. Over the next few weeks, silence became my strategy. I didn't block them. I didn't answer them. I didn't warn them. I just watched. Because when someone is used to taking from you without consequence, the moment you stop giving, they expose themselves. Sure enough, they did. Mom started texting like nothing had happened first. Hey sweetheart, haven't heard from you. Just checking in. Translation, we need something. Dad followed with shorter messages, sharper ones. Call me. We need to talk. Don't make this difficult. Then came my sister, Emily. Are you okay? Mom's stressed. Just come home and figure it out. Home. The same home they said wasn't mine. I saved every message. Meanwhile, any spare minute outside my job became research, housing law, property equity, financial contribution, implied ownership, constructive trusts, unjust enrichment. Terms I didn't know existed started sounding like weapons I wasn't sure I was allowed to hold, but wanted to. I met with attorneys. Attorney number 1 treated me like a sad little girl seeking emotional validation. Attorney number 2 told me my chances were unlikely, because courts don't usually care about family drama. But attorney #3. She didn't baby me. She didn't look bored. She read the documents in silence, flipping page after page, her eyebrows lifting slightly. Finally, she said, "You have a case. A strong one. They benefited from your financial contributions while actively concealing their intentions. That's not family conflict, that's exploitation." That word exploitation hit something deep inside me. This text alone, she continued, tapping her finger on the printed screenshot, suggests malicious intent. The message where Mom told me they changed the locks. The haha. Cold. Unapologetic. Evidence. For the first time in my life, someone looked at my story and didn't tell me to forgive and move on. She said, "Let's fight." I went home that evening, the city glowing gold under the streetlights, and sat at my desk again. The hum of the heater filled the room. My evidence folder had grown thicker. Organized, labeled, dated on my screen. The numbers stretched out in neat little rows. 47,000 toward the mortgage. 23,000 toward renovations. 15,000 in emergencies. $85,000 of my life. Gone into a house where my name never once appeared on the deed. But that's the thing about numbers. They don't disappear. They don't forget. They don't lie. People do point 2 months after the lock-changing text. While I was eating leftovers in my quiet apartment, an email popped up, subject line, "Urgent property sale notification," from my parents' realtor. They were selling the house. Silently. Secretly. Quickly. Without telling me, I stared at the screen, fork halfway to my mouth, then set it down slowly. There it was. The final puzzle piece. The proof of intent. The trigger my lawyer said would make the case airtight. And I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. They really thought I'd stay quiet forever. They didn't know me at all. The day of mediation didn't feel like a battle. It felt like a funeral. Not for me. For the illusion my parents had spent years constructing. The sky was pale and washed out as I walked through downtown Portland, my evidence folder tucked under my arm. Early morning traffic hummed around me, but it all sounded distant, like I was underwater. My heartbeat was steady. My palms were dry. I'd already lived through the hardest part, being thrown away by the people I once called home. Now I was walking into the last room where I would ever let them talk over me. The law office was tall and cold, all glass and chrome, the kind of place where truth was just another item on the menu. I checked in with the receptionist, who directed me to a conference room down the hall. The room looked sterile, almost painfully so, white walls, long polished table, a bowl of untouched mints in the center. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like nervous insects. I sat down, placed my folder in front of me, and waited. A few minutes later, the door opened, and my past walked in, beige coat, soft smile. That practiced gentleness she wore like jewelry, meant to distract you from the blade hidden underneath. "Kara, sweetheart," she said with a voice as smooth as lotion. "You look thin. Have you been eating?" I almost laughed. Her concern arrived years too late. Pressed shirt. Tight jaw. A storm in his eyes. He thought he was hiding. He didn't sit right away. Just stared at me like I was an ungrateful problem he needed to disassemble. "Let's get this over with," he muttered at my sister. 2 years younger. Still twisting things in her hands. Lip balm, hair tie, purse strap. Like she needed something to fidget with to avoid looking directly at the truth. Her eyes flicked to mine, glossy with worry or guilt or both. I didn't blame her the way I once did. But I didn't protect her from the truth either. The mediator entered next, followed by our attorneys. "Good morning," my lawyer said quietly, giving me a subtle nod. "A reminder. You're ready." They aren't. Everyone Saturday the tension didn't rise. It settled, heavy and suffocating, like dust after a building collapses. The session began with polite disclaimers, neutral phrasing, practiced calm. Then my lawyer opened my folder. 1 page. Then another. Then another. Mortgage contributions. Utility payments. Roofing materials. Loan transfers. Screenshots. Voicemails. Every line neatly exposed. Dad leaned forward, scoffing harder with every page. "Those were gifts," he said. She was helping her family. That's what family does. My lawyer didn't even blink. The transactions were labeled temporary. Reimbursements were discussed repeatedly. Mrs. Liu, she slid another paper forward, referred to them as loans in this text message. My mother stiffened. "I never said loan," she stammered. I don't remember." "That's okay," my lawyer said, tapping the timestamp. "The message remembers." Dad's eyebrow twitched like he hadn't expected the truth to come with receipts. Then came the printout of the message, the one sent at 11:27 p.m. The night they locked me out. Mom's handwriting trembled as she read it. The mediator frowned deeply. This is not a joke. And it certainly doesn't appear friendly. Dad opened his mouth to argue. I cut him off. You told me I didn't have a home anymore, I said calmly. And now you're upset that I believed you? Silence collapsed over the room like a falling wall. Mom swallowed hard. Emily's eyes fell to the table. Dad's face flushed red. The kind of red that usually came before shouting. He didn't shout this time. Not here. Not where his words could be used as evidence. Then the opposing attorney spoke, the older man hired to defend them, but instead of confidence, his face looked like someone who had realized he was hired to plug holes in a sinking ship. He leaned toward my parents and whispered, but the room was so quiet we all heard him anyway. We have a serious problem. It was the same sentence their lawyer had emailed them weeks earlier. The same words they ignored. Mom's head snapped toward him. Dad stiffened. Emily froze. For a moment, nobody breathed. Mom reached across the table, voice cracking. Car, honey, we took care of you your whole life. You don't need to do this. You didn't take care of me, I said. You used me. Her lips trembled. Dad scoffed. Emily looked like she wanted to vanish. Dad slammed his hand onto the table. After everything we gave you. He didn't finish. I leaned in slightly, completely calm. Everything you gave me? I said. Look at the numbers. You didn't raise me. You drained me. He froze. Because the truth isn't loud, it's undeniable. The mediator exhaled. My lawyer closed the folder. I believe Kara is entitled to 50% ownership, she said firmly. The documentation supports it. The mediator nodded. It's a reasonable claim. My parents knew it was over. 6 weeks later, the court's written decision arrived and I sat alone in my new apartment when I opened it. Black and white letters. Official as stone awarded. 50% ownership interest in the property. The house sold for more than any of us expected. After legal fees and taxes, my parents walked away with half of what they had assumed would fund their retirement. They built their future on my obedience. It collapsed under my evidence that I didn't move back in. Of course not. Instead, I bought a small townhouse across town. Quiet street. A single maple tree outside my window. A place where my peace wasn't a negotiation. The very first thing I did. I changed the locks.my keys. My rules. My life. My silence, earned, not forced. Sometimes my phone lights up with their names. Dad's emails. Full of regret he tries to disguise as anger. Mom's voicemails. Syrupy, apologetic, desperate. Emily's texts. Caught somewhere between loyalty and honesty. I listen to none of them. I answer no one. Because some doors, once closed, never open again. And it's not revenge out of cruelty, it's revenge out of clarity. People think revenge is loud shouting, chaos, broken glass. But real revenge is quiet. It's a court ruling signed with a judge's pen. It's finally being beyond their reach. It's peace they can't disturb. It's building a life so whole they can't enter it. It's knowing that locking me out was the worst mistake they ever made. Because when they closed their door on me, they opened mine. And this time the only person with a key is me. If you connected with my story, if it made you feel something, or if you just want to support my journey, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your support helps me keep writing, keep healing, and keep creating more stories like this. Thank you for being here. Means more than you know.